Hey, I just thought we'd have a quick look at this Photons to Photos website together. So just Google noise ISO photons to photos. It's quite interesting, actually. Um, I think I'd seen a video somewhere on YouTube talking about this, but I just thought that we'd have a look at it ourselves. So this is really quite interesting because this is the if I've got this wrong, comment below. But and if I'm confusing things, then also this channel is, even though I've been doing photography for like most of my life, to be fair, a lot of this digital stuff is kind of new to me, even though I've been doing that for a long time. I haven't done much in the last 15 years. So all of this is kind of, it's kind of new to me as well. So I'm just interested in this. So over on this box on the right hand side, it's basically got every camera and a few phones as well. So that one down there is an Apple iPhone 14 Pro Max. So it's got a couple of it's got all Canons on there. We're going to look at Nikon because that's what I use. We will briefly look at Sony. We'll look at a couple of Sony cameras that I've used over the years, which isn't that many. So this is the Nikon ZLZ-8 that we've got highlighted here. You can see up here, it tells you the color that you are using, so blue and the camera. Let's have a look down here. So over the years, I've used the NEX7. They don't have an NEX7 here, so obviously that was before, I guess. Mind you, the D4 is on here, and that was surely around about the NEX7 time, but unless the NEX7 is under a different name. The NEX6. And I noticed another thing also, that the older cameras, they have this more curvaceous line here. So that's the NEX6. So let's come away from that. I had a 6400, which I've sold. Interestingly, the 6400 between ISO 500 and 6.4, thereabouts, what's that? So about 5,000 is very similar. This is interesting, actually. Is very similar to the Z8. And there's a little bit less noise, which is also interesting. In the lower ranges. So that's if that's what that means. We're looking at this together, figuring things out. So that's kind of that's a crop sensor. The 6400 is a crop sensor. Then the 6700. This is kind of interesting because the noise on the DX mark is actually different to these figures here. But anyway, so the 6700, which I still have, this is the 6700 here. I just like my Nikons. I must admit, I'm a bit of a Nikon fanboy, and I can't quite get to love that Sony. And it's about, with that lens on, it's about 850 grams. So admittedly, my combination is nearly double that. But yeah, it's still not the lightest. It's light enough though. Anyway, according to this, from ISO 500 up to 12.8, the noise on the 6700 is very similar to the Z8. So that is kind of interesting. And then it's a little bit lower there. I'm just going to take a nose. Right, let's have a look at this one here. So this is DX. So this is a DXO mark thingy. So the Z8, which is this one here. So Z8, and then which one is noise? So sports. So sports is basically the ISO. Right, that's better. Okay, I messed it up over that. So I know the overall score on the Z8 is 98 there. So that's the Z8, and the noise is 2500. And then if we go and find, actually, I don't think the NEX 6700. Interestingly, the noise of the Nikon D4 is better than the Z8, but then it's only a 16 megapixel camera. So this is interesting. So Sony a6400, and then the noise on this one is 14, which is significantly less than the on that other. It's interesting that. I wonder why they've. Yeah, so that's the 6.7. So let's come back down to the 6163. So that's a 6.4. I mean, that's interesting. I wonder how they work that out, because according to this, the Sony 6400, the noise is almost identical to the Z8, and yet when you look at the DxO mark, it's completely different. So that's interesting. Comment below on why you think that is, because obviously the newer cameras with the bigger sensors, is it to do with the smaller sensor? Are here measuring something different? I don't know. It must be something to do with the sensor size. It's just fun just having a look through this. All right, let's concentrate on Nikon. So anyway, we'll, oh, I got to remove it from down here, sorry. Let's get rid of that one. Okay, let's go back to Nikon. Let's go back to proper cameras. Let's go back to so that's the D4. So that's my other camera. So another thing that I am noticing is on the older cameras is the noise. There's this very gentle slopey thing here, and also on the D4, when you look at the DxO mark, it is better than the Z8. Was it better than the Z8? Let's have another look a minute. We're back up because it was 98%, so it should be easy to find. So it's that one there. So it's 25. So according to the DxO ratings, the Z8 is 25, and then the D4 is 29. So according to this, the D4 has better noise. And then when we come back to this one, like I said, it's just interesting just to have something fun just to look at together. And then when you look at this, the D4 is not as good when you look at these things. So they must be measuring them, doing something different. But it is surprising how good the D4 is, 10 years on or whatever it is, to the Z8. Obviously, you've got a lot of different megapixels and things like that. All right, let's well, I wonder what the D850 is, just out of curiosity, because I know people. There's a D850. So D850, this is the first time where you're starting to get this droppy thing here, not as much. Obviously, technology must be moving on, but that's obviously where it sort of goes up and then drops down, and then the D850 pretty much matches the Z8 on that. D6, ooh, that's a funny one. The D6 is all over the shop there. That is a funny graph again. And the D5, yeah, let's see the D5 and the D6. They've got that funny green wibbly wobbly line. Okay, let's come. The Z9 obviously is going to be pretty much exactly the same as a D8 because I think it's pretty much I think it's the same sensor in them. The ZF. So let's close the D4 because we don't need the D4 because otherwise we're going to get too many lines. We'll close the. So the ZF. And interestingly, the Z5, because, oh, hang on a minute, Z5, sorry, we need Z5 2. So the Z5 2 and the ZF pretty much identical because I think they have the same sensor in them. Because I actually quite like the idea of a Z5 2 or a ZF because they're actually lighter than the Z8 for walking. So let's have a look at the Z8. So the Z5 2 is this black one, and then the Z8 is the blue. So according to this, the Z5 2 has less noise than the Z8, which it would, and I'm just wondering whether that would be quite good for nighttime photography, which is one of the reasons why I was hanging on to the D4 because of the low noise. But the Z8, and then let's go back to the D4. So the Z5 2 is the black line, and that generally has lower noise than the D4. It'd be interesting if DxO do a rating for the Z5 2 in time if they haven't already. But that Z5 2, that's showing really quite good noise control. I quite like, the idea of that. But what I really want to sort of talk out, we'll kind of go around in circles here a bit, is the base ISO down here. You've got low noise, 100, 200. But when you get to the 400 mark on both of them, particularly the 800, you've got more noise up here at ISO 400 than you do all the way over here. Well, basically the same amount of noise, isn't it? So, right. So what I've done, I've removed the Z5. Just look at the Z8 for the minute, just to keep things simple. So you've got read noise log 2 DN and read noise DN. To be honest, I've no idea what the difference of those are, but let's not worry about that. So let's have a look down here. So this is the read noise at ISO 500, and it's 1.5 and 2.8. And then if we come along here, the read noise at 100 ISO is 1.4 and 2.7 because it's on this line here, 1.5 and 2.8. So the read noise at 100 is very similar to 500. And when we come up to, let's come up to here. So read noise at 200 is 2.4 and 5.4. And at 500, it's 1.5 and 2.8. So it's almost as if once we get to like 200 or something like that, you would be better off upping your ISO to 500. An ISO of 800 has a read noise of 2 and 4.2. 2 and 4.3. So an ISO of 159, so an ISO of 160 is about the same as 800. That's how I'm reading it. I'm kind of reading it as, so ISO 800 is 2 and 4.2, and 160 is 2 and 4.3. So it's almost as if, really, when you get to the 200 mark, you'd almost be better off just going to 800, because at 200, sorry, at 160, it's 2 and 4.3, and at 500, it's 1.5 and 2.8. So the noise stuff is less at 500 than it is at 200 and such like. So it's almost, I mean, I'll probably still carry on using 200 and 250. But once you start getting up to near the 400 mark, ISO 400, then you've got an ISO noise of 3 and 9, which is pretty much the same as 1600. So it's almost as if once you start getting up to the 3 to 400 mark, you'd be better off using 5, 6, 8, and 1000, because 1000 is 2.4 and 5.4. So 1000, ISO 1000 is 2.4 and 5.4, 2.4, 5.4, 2.4, 5.4. So the ISO read thing of 200, 2.4, 5.4 is about the same as 1000, 2.4, 5.4. So it's almost, once you get past 200, you start thinking about, and certainly before you get to 400, ideally, start thinking about upping the ISO to 500, because once you get to 500, it takes until 1600 at 3 and 8.9. And even then, even at 1600, there is less noise than at 400. It's obviously doing different computations and things like that. So whether there actually is less noise at 400 than, than 1600, answer below. This is kind of interesting, really. Notes below: these raw values are not appropriate for comparing camera models because they are not adjusted for gain or area. So that explains why we can't compare the Z8 and Co with the 6400 Sony. The shape of the curve can tell you something about the amplifier circuitry of the camera. Jagged curves, and we saw some jagged curves earlier, like the Nikon D3S, and I think there was D5 and the D6, show evidence of digital scaling. I don't understand what that means. I'm just reading what it says. Straight curves, like the D700, show evidence of being dominated by photosite noise. Curved curves, like the D90, show evidence of being dominated by ADC noise. Once the sharp curves with a sharp drop in the analog range, like the A7, show evidence of use of dual conversion gain. Quite a few cameras stop analog gain before reaching high ISO values. So let's find the A7. So Sony A7. Okay, then you get to the 7M3 and the 7M4. The Sonys are very good with noise. I will say I have heard or seen that when you look at the DX, when you look at the DX thingy, the noise on the Sonys is very well controlled. I must admit, they do, but then they make the sensors, don't they? Make good sensors. Okay, yeah. So obviously, so this is to do with dual gain, isn't it? So obviously, once you get to basically what we're saying is that I'm kind of thinking that when you get to ISO 200 to 400, you'd almost be better off upping the ISO to 500 and then using that stop between 200 and 400, because basically that is one stop of light, isn't it? You're doubling it. So one stop, 200 to 400 is one stop of light. And you would, in effect, be able to, by increasing the ISO from, say, 200 to 500, which is more than a stop, obviously, you'd be able to increase your shutter speed, for example. So this might help people who worry about shutter speeds and ISOs and things like that. Just think, okay, I'm at ISO 200, but my shutter speed is a 60th, for example, and I'm concerned about noise, I'm concerned about shutter, blurry doodahs. I know what I'll do. Rather than going from 200 to 400 and increasing your noise and one stop of light, you could go to 500 and have less noise, because 500 is 1.5 and 2.8, 1.5 and 2.8. So there is less noise at 500 than there is at 150. I mean, the amount of noise at 500 is 1.5 and 2.8, which is effectively an ISO of 100. It's almost as if ISO of 100, once you go above that, you almost may as well go to 500 and gain 100 to 200 is double, 200 to 400 is double. That is two stops. That is two stops of light. So obviously that would give you a 60th, 125th, a 250th of a shutter speed. So yeah, it's just it's food for thought when we're taking our things and we're worrying about noise low down here, or we're not worrying about noise down here, but actually we should be considering it in a Z8. Obviously, not all cameras are going to do this. Have a look on this website here. And then obviously let's go back to, so let's go to the Z5 II and let's cancel the Z8. So we just got one on here. You can have as many as you want on here to compare them, but then it just gets a bit confusing. But obviously, the noise values of the Z8, of the Z5, sorry, are less than the Z8. And what's that one there? So that's on the Z5. There's less noise at 600 than there is on the down on the Nikon Z8. Although they say not to compare things, obviously, but I mean, everybody compares things, don't they? But with the Z5, if you were using the Z5, you could get up to say 300 or 400 and then go to 800. So with the Z8, it's like at the 200 mark, you really may as well, on the Z8, at ISO 200, you may as well go straight to ISO 500 and gain over a stop of light. I mean, that's one and a bit stops, isn't it? That would, so then you could either increase your aperture for more depth of field, or increase your shutter speed for a faster shutter speed and less blur. The Z5 II, you could go to say 400, and then once you get to 400, you'd probably be just about off going to 800, because 800 is 1.3 and 2.4, which is a lot less than 400 on the Z5. So, you know, it's almost on the Z5. Once you get to 400, go to 800, if not before. And on the Z8, once you get to 200 or thereabouts, you may as well go from 200 to 500 ISO, gain a stop of light from the sensor, and then use that for either increase your aperture for more depth of field or increase the shutter speed, or a little bit of each. It's just a little bit of food for thought here. Maybe we can have a conversation in the comments below. Obviously on the Z5 it goes up to 1200. The Z8 obviously doubles that up to 25,000, and then it looks like 51,000 with these little triangles. That might be something to do. It probably tops out at 25, and then that's probably the high 1, high 2, high 3 up there. And then on the Z8, 63, well, it's probably like 64, isn't it? And that's probably like low 1, low 2, and low 3. And, you know, just out of curiosity, does anyone use low 1, low 2, low 3 on these cameras? So the ISO starts at 100 on the Z5. So it looks like on the Z5 it starts at 100, and then you've got a low down to 50, and on the Z8 it starts at 63. So that's another interesting thing. So it looks like the Z8 starts at 64, and the Z5 looks like it starts at 100, and obviously the Z5-2 tops out at 1200, round figures, and the Z8 obviously, so the Z8 covers more, 64 to 2500, and the Z5-2 is 100 to 1200. So yeah, but then it's a cheaper camera. But I am half thinking the Z5 because it look Z5-2 because it's a good price, and it's a little bit lighter, and then whack a little bit lighter lens on it. It's still going to be heavier than my Sony, still a bit heavier to be fair, but it would be about 300 grams. I was thinking of that 24 to 70 f4 Nikon lens, and that would save about 300 grams, but then you're not going to get that 70 to 120. So I don't know, it's just food for thought. And for winter, it is slightly better noise on the Z5-2. And like I said, for camping and hiking, I really would like to try and do some more pictures and things. And yeah, anyway, I was just looking at this and I thought, let's just make a video of it. I know only one person is going to watch it, and probably only half person would have got to the end here. But that's fine. It's just an interesting thing to look at, and interesting thing to look at and share. So I hope you've learned something from this. So yeah, with your Z8, when you get to 200, go to 500. With your Z5-2, when you get to 400, go to 800, and give yourself that stopper light on aperture if you want more depth of field, or shutter speed if you want more action stopping thingamybobs, if this is indeed what this even indicates, which I believe it is. Thanks very much for watching. That's it. Thanks very much. See you in the next one, whatever we come up with.